Welcome to another edition of the Afternoon Idol. My name is Andrew. I'm a certified mindfulness meditation coach in the Unified Mindfulness System. You can find out more about UM at unifiedmindfulness.com. I am many things, but I am not a licensed mental health professional, nor am I a licensed therapist. And unfortunately, at this point, I am not authorized to be a Zen teacher. I am an ordained Buddhist priest, but you also could be too. You can get ordained online. So what we normally do here is we play around with comparisons, maybe is one way to put it, of techniques. And in the contrast of those comparisons, we begin to see what might be a good match for our nervous system as we craft practices to support ourselves. As Jeff Warren says, to help aid in becoming your own teacher. So the idea that you don't need to have some guru to tell you what to do, that you can have someone sort of walking alongside you on the path, pointing out things that have worked out, and you can try them out and verify what works and what doesn't, knowing that what works will vary on a day-to-day basis or as you go through your practice. So that is a bit of the spirit. And some of you who are here yesterday will know that those that weren't here or didn't watch, that I've accepted a new job, and in February, I'll be starting in early February, and I don't know what my schedule is going to be like, so I'll have to discontinue at this time. But I'm looking for a way to continue to do live streams and be able to make these same sort of guidances available and such. So that's one thing that either by Thursday or maybe Friday, I'll try to have like a survey of like what times work for people and things like that. Like some folks have already reached out and talked to me about times that have been hard and everything else. So that's one thing. The other is not promising this in any way, but there's a possibility of starting that I've been looking at the possibility of starting a CEC affiliate, sort of loosely, through their activation kit. And so that's one thing that I'd also considered. And so that would be something we'd probably move to a different format to support that sort of thing more effectively. So probably Zoom or something like it. So that may be something that I include in that survey to kind of see about that. A few people recently that live in Arizona had asked me if there was a CEC Arizona group. So that was part of that sort of aspect. It would be virtual. Yeah, and I don't see there being any point in it being just an Arizona group at this time. And by being I had considered doing something like this a year and a half or 2 years ago, but I was, how do I get a physical space, and who do I want to rent with, and do I need like injury licensing and all these other sort of things. So the very real possibility of like litigation in the US, I guess. So I didn't do that. So that's something I kind of was thinking about recently. And I've been sort of talking to some folks that have been doing that as well, like small groups that are also unified mindfulness coaches. So there's some ways that, I appreciate everyone showing the gratitude for this experiment, the roughly 3-month experiment, some way that this may continue on in sort of some shifting form. So what are we going to do today? So there's this great line in The Big Lebowski where the dude has this realization, and he says something to the effect of, "Oh wow, I can't believe my thinking about this case has become so uptight." And that case being the disappearance of Bunny Lebowski that the movie sort of centers around. And I always loved this sort of moment, this playful realization that the dude offers for us in character, of noticing the uptightness around the thinking. And I kind of often, when uptight gets mentioned in meditation prompts or things, it stands out for me. I'm not totally sure why, but this quote from the Big Lebowski is what I sort of imagine points to it. Um, so I think the daily trip yesterday, the pause, which I very much enjoyed, had some sort of mention around looking or noticing a sort of uptightness kind of quality. So yeah, so that's just a noticing in that, and I thought that might be something to kind of play with today. So much like in maybe something like chess, you might practice sort of opening moves, and you would do them over and over and over, or chord progressions in music or something. I was thinking about just sort of this process of in our do something or that will contrast with doing nothing. We play around with just noticing when we're uptight, and that uptightness could be around the thoughts or around thinking, or it could be in the emotional body, which in speak we'd consider that feel in. Right, feel in is the inner elements of feel, the dimension that we use as a category to help sort our sensory experience when we're noting. And so we can play around with the ways that an uptight quality may come up. And so for me, it's probably, I always think about it as probably happening in either around something that has activated in herein, and I'm likely to find that uptight quality in the body. But I'm open to, whatever might be a thought for you around how uptightness may show up for you in your experience. And then the idea there would be kind of twofold, is to see when you notice it, when the sort of spotlight of attention is on that, then does it go away as an experiment? So to Jeff McPee's point, this idea, a lot of people use a cold shower as sort of an equanimity, to kind of test your equanimity from a physical perspective. So, how much do you dread that? Or if you know any swimmers, they talk about the dread of standing on the cool deck of a pool, knowing it's going to be cold, but once they jump in, it's not as bad as it seems when they're standing on the edge of that cool deck. So a little bit of that sort of quality of how does that show up? And I imagine, but I don't know. So we'll play a little experimenting here, and we'll sort of, with curiosity and interest, search around. That uptightness shows up probably in the body, and then seeing if the noticing of it will allow it to release. If it doesn't, no big deal. So that, is sort of one stance. So noticing it, seeing if it subsides or softens or melts away. If it doesn't, allowing it, totally fine. Strengthens our inner smoothness muscle, equanimity. And then the other aspect would be to play a bit with what I had talked about in the prompt yesterday of stretching up and settling in. That's the very impactful, terse prompt that Shinzen offers pretty much for all of his guidance. If you ever listen to a Shinzen Young guidance, he'll say stretch up and settle in. And that is, in that sort of power-packed short form, that's everything I do in 3 minutes around adopting a posture and all the things I normally do at the top of a meditation. He gets all of that in stretch up and settle in. Susan Piver does something similar where she'll say, take your seat, or establish mindfulness of the body. So there's these sort of cues. So what we can do is consider, if there's tightness, if we're uptight around something, a trying and opening move, right? Like my analogy from chess, practicing and then opening move. So we notice the tightness, stretch up, and settle back in. So we've played with stillness and getting still. Let's see if resetting physically is something that helps. And if it's not, no big deal. And then ride that out until you get to do nothing, and then off with your day. So so hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can always point out, how I could clarify it. But really just an experiment around, is there enough tightness? And then maybe the noticing melts it away. And if it doesn't, stretch up, settle in. And if you don't want to do that, just let it be there. Again, equanimity. Let's do this. So as we begin, Shinzen would say stretch up and settle in as a reset or as a starting point. For us, we'll just walk through that process a little bit. So we want to adopt a posture that helps us be both relaxed and alert. That posture could be sitting in a chair, sitting on the floor, lying down, standing up, your favorite yoga pose, whatever. Think of that posture as being dignified. I often think about the notion of it being upright. And as we begin, just noticing if there's any tension in the body. Each of us holds tension in different places. You'll know yours better than I. And seeing if the noticing causes the tension to release, subside, perhaps melt away. And if it doesn't, that's our first opportunity in this sit to bring in a allowing and no big deal attitude toward that. As we begin our exploration of finding any uptightness, do a few conscious, deliberate breaths. If available, in through the nose and out through the nose. Breathing in through the nose helps us to slow the inhale a bit. And that slowing helps us fill the lower lungs. And on the exhale, as Jeff says, that's the downward motion. So with each exhale, if you can extend and accentuate that, you may notice that you settle into this a bit more. This is a perfect place that you could sit for the remaining 13 plus minutes. And since our technique at the beginning is a little more vague, just know that if you're confused, you can always come back to this simple, bare bones practice. And as we set out to explore a little, just seeing if there's any uptightness in the body. We're open to the possibility that this uptight quality, but it seems most likely that it'll be in the body. And if there isn't anything that you would call uptight or contracting or bracing, that's good. Consider that a reward state. And if you need a consistent anchor while sitting, you can always use the feeling of your feet on the ground, or the sense of the body the weight and stability of the body as you're sitting or lying down. So we are cultivating this sort of open, allowing posture, noticing if there's bracing or this uptight quality. And if not, using sensations in the body as a stabilizing home base. So explore this on your own. I'll check in a few minutes. When we're looking for a state like this, it's possible that it won't be available. So we run into this when we look for rest or flow or really any of those specific states. So we can lean on our home base, can provide us with a sort of soft fascination with sensory experience. And the softness allows us to be open to if those qualities arise and puts us in a ready state. Good. So we'll let go of that technique, regardless of how it worked out. We'll shift into our do nothing practice. In adopting the do nothing technique, we allow whatever happens to happen and let go of any real effort to direct or orchestrate our attention. Another way to put that may be to say that we're sitting and we're aware that we're sitting, or we know that we're sitting. As we sit and we do nothing, sometimes we get a glimpse of this quality that, regardless of the perspective or technique, that we already are aware, or that we're sort of almost spontaneously clear and concentrated. So if that shows up, it's a bit of a reward state kind of thing. And if it doesn't, no big deal. Ultimately, in do nothing, when we don't feel that, we're attuning sort of our experience. There's a benefit in the imperfectness of a sit, even if it doesn't feel that way. Keep going. invite you to connect to your surroundings and your own pace. It feels good. Open your eyes and stretch and move a bit. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for spending 25 plus minutes with me. Thank you for making it here to practice. Most of the meditation practice, showing up. Oh, awesome, Jennifer. I hope with the lateness it made sense. So, in playing around with that sort of technique, we kind of we can decide whether staying and getting still, so playing around with resetting and moving, staying still and just sort of waiting out the sort of feelings of uptightness and such, maybe that's more beneficial. But we often will find that out by over accentuating the opportunity to reset, to stretch up and settle in Shinzen's parlance. So I just offer that as an aside. I'm starting to see that the benefit of my practice is often my imperfect practice. So when I do things imperfectly, I get a sort of felt sense of how out of balance it feels. And that allows me to then kind of play with that sort of quality. So we often are sort of not mean in an admonishing way, but we're often sort of directed to be still, stay still. And so there's an experiment quality to what is it like if I don't? What is it like if I reset when I feel tightness or uptight? So just as an aside. And then the other thing I realized while we were sitting is that that uptight quality is a little bit of what I was describing in a guest host that I did. So this 3-stage sit. I can't remember when it was now. It was probably sometime in October. For the Do Nothing Project, I did this sort of like settle, expand, coast, I think is what I called it. And so that is related to this. I didn't realize that until I started talking. Yeah, I always encourage you, Jennifer, to do your own thing. So no problem there. So you're very welcome, Angie. Thank you for everyone showing up. We're a little past the bottom of the day. And then again, if you did, this week will be the last week at this time for the live stream, and then I'm going to be doing putting together a little Google survey form to try to figure out if there's any times that may be beneficial or work for folks that attend regularly, and then also folks that occasionally are watching the recorded one, seeing if there's a time that matches those folks that are watching recorded because they can't make it to this time. So yeah, so that's that. And then I think that's everything. We're almost a half hour here, so I should probably stop. So I'm sort of like pull the string on my back and I just keep talking. So yeah, tomorrow's Thursday, which means we take the do something part and switch it up with the do nothing part, and we do nothing at the beginning and we finish with a particular practice. I'm probably going to do either hear flow or feel rest. So that's what I'm playing around with. So as possibilities for that. Again, I usually put a technique in that. So today was a little bit loosey-goosey. So thank you for your patience with that. I appreciate it. All right. See you folks tomorrow.